Today we are going to talk about the last topic in the chapter of life processes. So what excretion is actually? Whatever waste materials are produced in our body. Suppose the cells are respiring. So in respiration we have some carbon dioxide. So that has to be excreted out of the body. And then suppose we intake water, and a lot of water sometimes becomes in excess that is not required by the body. So that also has to be thrown out. Then there may be some nitrogenous waste. There is urea, uric acid. All these things are very harmful for our body if they stay in our body for a long time. So they also have to be removed. Sweat. Sweat also is a form of excretion. Through sweat, body is removing excess water and excess nitrogenous wastes. So excretion is nothing but the removal of metabolic wastes from the body. What is metabolic waste? Whatever life processes are going on in our body, they may produce some waste materials. So excretion is the removal of metabolic wastes from the body. Wastes from the body. So let us see what all things are actually waste products in our body. What is the need for excretion? So first of all, there is carbon dioxide. When our cells respire, they produce carbon dioxide which has to be thrown out. Then there may be some excess water which needs to be gotten rid of. There may be some nitrogenous wastes like urea, uric acid, ammonia. All of these also have to be thrown out of the body. So nitrogenous wastes. Then fourth, do you remember in liver, red blood cells were dying, right? Older red blood cells were going to the liver and dying. So when these red blood cells die, the hemoglobin, which is red in color, it breaks down and it produces a yellow pigment which is called bilirubin or biliverdin. These are the two pigments from which bile juice is produced. So bile juice also may be in excess many a times. So bile juice which is in excess has to be removed from the body. Fifth thing is that there may be some undigested food. There may be some undigested food, right? So from small intestine, food goes into the large intestine. From there it goes into the rectum. So that is all the undigested food. That also has to be removed from the body. So these are all the waste products that have to be removed from our body. And not all of these are a part of excretion. Do you think this removal of undigested food from the body is going to be a form of excretion? What do you think? Whatever undigested food is there, the stool that we pass as feces, do you think that is a part of excretion? Is that a part of excretory system?
Yes, ma'am.
So Nandana is saying that this is a part of excretory system. Anyone else? Do you have any opinion about it? Okay, we'll see in a little while. Sixth, there may be some excess salt in our body. There may be different type of salts and minerals which are in excess and they also have to be thrown out. This also includes some vitamins. So all of these are different forms of waste that our body has to remove. Of all these, if we talk about undigested food, this undigested food part is not a part of excretion. This is a part of digestive system. This is the work of digestive system. Excretory system has nothing to do with it. And about this we have already studied when we were studying digestion. Fine. So many a time students get confused that when we say excretion, we also mean the removal of undigested solid food from our body. No, we are not talking about undigested solid food. That is the work of digestive system. It doesn't come in excretory system. So remember that excretion is required for the removal of these 5 substances: carbon dioxide, water, nitrogenous wastes, excess of bile juice, and whatever salts or minerals and vitamins are in excess. Only these portions are removed by excretion. These are the various waste products in our body. Carbon dioxide is one of the waste products. How is carbon dioxide excreted from the body? It is excreted by the lungs, right? When we exhale air, carbon dioxide is then released from the body. So this is a part of excretion. Some people think that excretion is whatever is taking place in the kidney. No, it is not so. Excretion may involve various organs. One of them are lungs. How are lungs helping in excretion? They are removing carbon dioxide from our body. Second, whatever excess bile pigments are there, we saw, right? When RBCs, red blood cells, die in the liver, they break down and produce bile pigments. These bile pigments, most of them will go into the small intestine. Do you remember bile juice used to go into small intestine? It helped in making the chyme alkaline. Okay, so most of the bile juice goes into the intestine and then is excreted out in the stools during defecation, during the removal of undigested solid food. But some of the bile pigments, they may be absorbed in the blood. Some bile pigments may be absorbed in the blood. These also have to be removed, right? So these are removed in the form of urine, removed with urine, right? This is also a form of excretion. This is also one of the waste material that has to be removed. So you can think about it like this. Suppose you have a little child. It is feeding only on mother's milk, right? It is not eating anything yellow. But the urine that is produced, that is yellowish in color. Why is it yellow? How is that yellow color coming from? That is actually because of the presence of some bile pigments. Bile pigments are slightly yellowish in color. Okay. Next part of excretion is the removal of excess water. This excess water, it has various mechanisms to get removed. One of the most important ways in which excess water is removed is when we are exhaling air. See, when you are exhaling air, take your phone and try to exhale on its screen. What will happen? Some type of mist will come on it, right? So that means when we are exhaling air, it also contains some water. So how is excess water removed from the body? Some of it is present in the exhaled air. Some of it may be removed in the form of sweat, right? Some of it may be removed in the form of sweat. Third, and the most important thing is that it is again removed in the form of urine, right? Urine in the kidneys. Urine is produced in the kidneys. From there also excess water is removed. This is again a part of excretion. All these processes are a part of excretion. Now, fourth, whatever excess minerals and vitamins are present, they also will be removed with the urine. They are also excreted with urine. This is also a part of the excretory system. Okay? Urine contains some excess minerals and vitamins which may be present in the body. The fifth most important thing in excretory system is the removal of nitrogenous metabolic waste. Let me name some of these. One is urea. Then we have uric acid. Our body might also have some amount of ammonia. These are the nitrogenous metabolic wastes, and these have to be removed from our body, otherwise they become very poisonous. They are highly poisonous if they stay in the body for a long time. And these are mainly removed in the urine during excretion. So this is also a part of excretion. Let us remember now what are the 5 things. We have carbon dioxide, we have water, we have excess minerals and vitamins, we have nitrogenous waste, and we have some bile pigments. These are the 5 waste products in our body that are removed by the excretory system. Now we come to the point that Nandana had asked. Defecation is not excretion. Defecation is nothing but the removal of solid undigested waste. Removal of undigested solid waste from the body. This is not a part of excretion. This is a part of the digestive system. This process is known as defecation. I think we are all ready for the first poll, and let me just launch it, and your time starts now. I think all of you have responded. I'm going to end the poll. Easy, right? Okay, let's see. First one. Which of the following substances need to be excreted from the body? So all of you said urea, that's good. Then excess water. Amino acids doesn't have to be removed. Amino acids are actually very important for our body. So amino acids is not the right answer. Here, except glucose, amino acids and glycogen, all are correct. All of them are waste for the body. Second, excretion is the removal of solid undigested food from the body. This is false. That's what I have been explaining. This process is known as defecation. It is not known as excretion. Still, about 2 of you have said that it is true. It is not true. This is false. Third, sweat is a form of excretion. Very good. It is true. Fourth, dash are the organs that help in this excretion of carbon dioxide. Yes, the correct answer is lungs here. When we exhale air, it contains carbon dioxide. Fifth, some of the nitrogenous waste in our body are, so there are 3 of them, urea, ammonia and uric acid. Sixth, excess minerals and vitamins are removed from the body. They are removed from the body by the kidneys in the form of urine. So the correct answer is the third option, which is kidneys. Alright, let's move forward now. Now let's talk about urinary system. This has not to be confused with the excretory system. It is not the same as excretory system. Okay? Excretory system का एक छोटा सा part है urinary system. Urinary system is a part of the excretory system. Urinary system is mainly responsible for removal of nitrogenous waste. For removal of nitrogenous waste. Okay. Along with it, some other things are bile pigments. Then in urine, there is also some amount of water, excess water. So urinary system helps us in removing nitrogenous waste, bile pigments, water and excess salts and vitamins. These are all removed by the urinary system, and you can see here in the diagram, urinary system consists of 2 kidneys which are bean shaped. Then we see 2 long tube like structures here. Okay, those are known as ureters. Those tubes are then entering into a small bladder at the bottom. You see here, this is the bladder. The urine is actually stored in this bladder. We also see some blood vessels here. One is blue in color, which shows it contains deoxygenated blood. One is red in color, which shows that it contains oxygenated blood. So let's see all of these in detail. So urinary system mein we are mainly dealing with the formation of urine. Okay, so I've drawn this diagram here. Let's start to label it. Let me use a nice color. Yeah. So this bean shaped structure, 2 in number, they are actually known as kidneys. This is one kidney, this is the other one. Who is going to tell me which is the right kidney, which is the left kidney? You remember heart?
Yes.
So same way. What do you think? Which is
Ma'am, the right one
Will be
is the
vice versa.
yeah.
yes, it will be vice versa.
Ma'am, the right one is less.
And left one is right.
Very good, very good. So this here is actually the left kidney. I'll write it as LK, and this on the left is actually the right kidney. Now you see these brown colored tubes here, right? These tubes are known as ureters. The function of this tube is that once the kidneys have prepared urine, that urine is going to flow into the ureters. From these ureters then go and join a bladder which is known as urinary bladder. What is its function? It helps in the storage of urine. Fine. And then we see a narrow tube here at the bottom of the urinary bladder. This is from where urine is excreted out of the body. So this is known as urethra. This small tube is known as urethra. Now, what was the name of the process with which food was moving in the alimentary canal? Do you remember? How was food moving in the...
Peristalsis.
Very good.
Peristalsis
Peristalsis.
movement.
Yes. So in the same way, with the help of ureteral peristalsis, urine is moving in the ureter. How is urine moving in the ureter? Through ureteral peristalsis. What is peristalsis? The rhythmic contraction and expansion of the muscles around the ureter causes the urine to move into the urinary bladder. Now, if urinary bladder doesn't have any control, then the flow of urine will not be able to be controlled by humans. So there must be something to control how this urine is going to move outside the body. For that, around this urethra, we have some circular sphincter muscles. Again, from digestive system, we know sphincter muscles are circular muscles that help in regulating the movement of anything. Okay, so even this urethra it is going to be surrounded by some circular muscles. These are nothing but sphincter muscles. Correct? And what do? They help in regulating the movement of urine outside the body. Now let's come to the tricky part. You see there is a red tube going here. Okay, there is a red blood vessel. So that means that it is carrying oxygenated blood. So what is it? Is it an artery or a vein?
Vein.
Ma'am, artery.
Vein.
Okay, a lot of mixed answers here. This is actually carrying oxygenated blood. So it is an artery. You must remember from circulatory system that pulmonary artery is the only artery in our body that carries deoxygenated blood. But here we have oxygenated blood. So it is definitely going to be an artery. Okay. It is definitely going to be an artery. And here the name of this artery is aorta. What is heart doing? Heart was supplying oxygenated blood to different parts of the body. So this is actually coming from the heart. This main red tube, it is coming from the heart. Heart is bringing oxygenated blood to the kidneys. Kidneys need some blood for their functioning. So that blood they are getting through the aorta. Okay. Now this aorta, once it reaches the kidney, it starts branching out. See, this main aorta, it has now started branching out like this, right? So this small thing which is actually supplying oxygenated blood to the kidney is known as renal artery. Renal means something related to kidney. So from aorta, renal artery is getting branched and it is providing oxygenated blood to both the kidneys. Is it clear? Fine. Now, let's talk about this blue thing. What is this blue tube that is here? We know that it is going to be a vein, right? This is blue in color. It carries deoxygenated blood. So it is a vein. But what is the name of this vein? This is actually the inferior vena cava. You know, when once kidneys have used up this blood, they are going to give out deoxygenated blood. That deoxygenated blood has to be carried back to the heart so that heart can oxygenate it. So this is actually inferior vena cava. So where will it take this deoxygenated blood? It will take it to the heart and to the right atrium of the heart, and it will get purified. Now, so this main vein is actually the inferior vena cava, and this small branches that you see, one blue branch over here, another one over here, these two branches are actually renal vein. Okay, so whatever deoxygenated blood is there in the kidney, renal veins are collecting them and giving it into the inferior vena cava. I hope I didn't confuse you over there. So we understood renal artery. It is a branch of aorta. We have understood renal vein also. Renal veins join together into the inferior vena cava. So these are various parts of the excretory system, and this diagram has been asked many times in your board exams, both for ICSE board as well as CBSE board. They ask you to draw this diagram and label it. So it will be for around 3 or 4 marks. So don't forget to practice this, and these are the various things that you will have to mark over there. Kidneys are the 2 organs that are going to form urine. Okay. So we see a red tube over here, right? This red tube is nothing but renal artery. Renal artery. So this here in the diagram we saw, no, this branch. This branch is entering the kidney. So this is actually known as renal artery. And from where did we get this? We got this branch from the aorta. We got it from the aorta. Aorta branched into 2 renal arteries, one for each kidney. Fine. Now, this renal artery, it brought a lot of oxygenated blood to the kidney. Kidney used up that blood, made urine. Now that blood got deoxygenated. So we have a renal vein here. This blue thing here is the renal vein. This renal vein, it collected all of that deoxygenated blood, and then it is going to send it to inferior vena cava. From there it will go to the heart. So what is the cycle? See, from aorta to renal artery, to kidney, from kidney to renal vein, from renal vein to inferior vena cava. From there it will go to the heart. So kidney has 2 parts, 2 main parts. One is this outer part. You see this outer part, this part is known as the cortex. This part is known as the cortex. Then we have this inner part, inner lighter part. See, outer part cortex is somewhat dark in color, but this inner part is light in color, and it is known as medulla. Medulla with a double N. Okay, so these are the parts of kidney that we need to know: cortex, medulla, renal artery, renal vein. And again, we have this brown tube over here. This is nothing but the ureter. Once the urine is formed, it will go through this tube into the urinary bladder. Let me launch the next poll. Your time starts now. Okay, so I think I'll share it now. Yeah. So first one, dash system is a part of the dash system. Wow, all of you answered that right. I'm surprised. So urinary system is a part of the excretory system. Second, the removal of undigested food from the intestines is known as, yes, it is known as defecation, not excretion. Third, the urine produced in the kidneys flows through the dash and collects in the urinary bladder. So urethra is not correct. Urethra is the small tube which helps to expel urine out of the body. So here the correct answer is ureters. Fourth, urine flows in the ureters by a process called, yes, it is peristalsis. Urination is wrong. Urination is when urine flows out of the body through the urethra. Fifth, a tube which expels urine outside of the body. Yeah, that is urethra. Sixth, dash controls the opening of the urinary bladder into the urethra. That's right again. The answer is sphincter muscles, circular muscles surrounding the urethra, which regulates the flow of urine. So I'm going to stop now. Let's move ahead and talk about the renal artery and renal vein once again. So there is a separate poll based on this. So again, pay a little bit of attention here. First of all, the main red tube is the aorta. This aorta is branching into these smaller tubes which are known as renal artery. They are 2 in number, 1 for each kidney. Then from there, the blood goes into the kidney. Kidney uses it up and it sends deoxygenated blood to renal vein. Renal veins then go and join the inferior vena cava. This is the inferior vena cava. So just think about it. Why is this blood actually coming to the kidney? It is coming to the kidney for the removal of nitrogenous waste. So if we talk about renal artery is the one that is bringing blood to the kidney, right? And we know that it contains deoxygenated blood. Oh, sorry. It contains oxygenated blood. Similarly, let me write renal vein here. Renal vein contains deoxygenated blood. Now, one of you give me the answer. If we talk about nitrogenous waste, where will it be higher? In renal artery or in renal vein? Where will nitrogenous waste be higher?
Renal vein.
Renal vein.
Renal veins.
Renal vein, renal vein, renal vein. Everybody says that the amount of nitrogenous waste will be greater in renal vein. Well, how can that be true? See, we know, let me just draw a flowchart to make it clear. We know that aorta is carrying blood to renal artery. This renal artery then sends this blood to the kidney. Okay. From kidney, it goes into renal vein, and from renal vein, it goes into the inferior vena cava. This is the pathway. And let me add heart also. Heart takes blood to aorta, and from inferior vena cava, blood again goes to the heart. Just think about it. Why is blood actually coming to the kidney? Why are we bringing all this blood? Why are we doing so much of mehnat? Why are we bringing blood to the kidney?
Remove the nitrogenous waste.
To remove nitrogenous waste. So in the kidney, what is happening? Removal of nitrogenous waste from the blood. This is what is happening in the kidney. Okay. And once the nitrogenous waste has been removed from the blood, the remaining portion of the blood goes into renal vein. Kidney has two things. First thing for kidney is some of the blood is going to renal vein, but the other part is going as urine. Don't forget this. This is a separate pathway. This was happening in the ureter. The nitrogenous waste came in blood to the kidney, but now the kidney has removed that waste. It has sent it to urine. Right? So renal vein actually does not contain any nitrogenous waste because kidneys have removed the nitrogenous waste. Are you able to understand? What is kidney doing? Kidney is just removing the nitrogenous waste, right? So if kidney has removed that waste and it has sent all that waste to urine, then in the blood nitrogenous waste is not present.
So, ma'am, then where is the high, this one what you asked?
I asked that you compare renal artery and you compare renal vein and you tell me where is the nitrogenous waste higher? In renal
So, it
artery?
is renal artery.
Yes, so in renal artery the nitrogenous waste will be higher because in renal vein we are sending blood after removing nitrogenous waste. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you understood that now? That in renal artery, nitrogenous waste is higher. Okay? And in renal vein, although it is deoxygenated, it is low in oxygen and it is also low in nitrogenous waste. So there is lesser nitrogenous waste. Renal artery is containing oxygenated blood. Renal vein is containing deoxygenated blood. So I hope now this pathway for blood and for urine is clear. Let me launch the next poll. Time starts now. Okay, I'm going to end and let's see the answers. First one. Renal artery carries blood from dash to dash. So this is renal artery. It is carrying blood from aorta to the kidney. Yes, second option is right. Many of you said that. Second, the blood in renal artery is. So renal artery contains oxygenated blood. It contains oxygenated blood and it also contains blood that is rich in nitrogenous waste. So these are the two right answers. Third, renal vein carries blood. Yes, it carries blood from the kidney to the inferior vena cava. Fourth, the blood in renal vein, so it is deoxygenated, but it is poor in nitrogenous waste. So you can learn it like this, that in renal vein, blood is poor in oxygen, poor in nitrogen, right? In renal artery, blood is rich in oxygen, rich in nitrogen. So there were two right answers, but unfortunately I forgot to make it multiple choice. Fifth, the inner light colored region of the kidney is known as, yes, it is known as medulla. Outer dark region is known as cortex. So here the correct answer is medulla. Okay, stopping now. Let's see the next part for today. We are about to enter the most interesting part of this chapter, which is nephron. Nephron is actually, you remember in lungs, there were some structural and functional units. What was its name? In lungs, what is the structural unit of the lungs? What actually does all the work?
Alveoli.
Yes, so there we had alveoli. Similarly, if we talk about excretory system or urinary system, we have nephron. So nephron is the structural and functional unit of the urinary system. Structural and functional unit of the urinary system. It has different names. Let me just write all of its different names. Actually, I'll write only two, but there are many more. So these nephrons are also known as kidney tubules. Tubules are small tubes. So they are also known as kidney tubules. Or this is where urine is actually produced. And that is why they are also known as uriniferous tubules. Uriniferous tubules. Or we can also call them renal tubule, because renal is something that pertains to the kidneys. So we can give it these names. So it has these four names that you should know. How many nephrons are present? On average, including both the kidneys, the number of nephrons is about 2 million. Okay, there are about 2 million nephrons in both kidneys. Both means total is not 4 million. Total is 2 million for two kidneys. So one kidney has about 1 million nephrons. The length of nephrons is about 4 to 5 centimeter. How much would that be? It would be this much, right? So this is the length of one single nephron, and there are about 1 million nephrons in one kidney. So if you add up the length of all the nephrons in the kidney, it will become about 60 kilometers. That's a long distance, right? 60 kilometers. Whoa, what is this? What diagram is this? Does this look scary to you? How do you like this diagram? Very tough, no? I'll do one thing. I will just draw it step by step and then show it to you, and you will see how easy it is then. This diagram is asked a lot of times in your exam. You have to know it very thoroughly. That is why I'm going to just draw it and show you. We will start with how the blood is actually carried to the nephron. So for that, we have the renal artery. Let me draw renal artery. What color should I use? So renal artery has oxygenated blood. I'll do one thing. I'll use red color for it. So renal artery is red in color. Fine. This is the renal artery. This renal artery branches into arterioles. You remember, arteries branch into arterioles. Arterioles branch into capillaries. So that is what is going to happen now. Let me keep on marking also. This is renal artery. I'll write it, renal artery. Now, this is going to branch into a small arteriole. This arteriole is going to carry oxygenated blood to the nephron. Do not forget that we are actually trying to draw nephron here. So this small arteriole, its name is afferent arteriole. This is called as AFFERENT. This is afferent arteriole. From afferent arteriole, we know that arterioles further break up into smaller capillaries. Okay, so this is going to form a bundle of capillaries like this. This broke up into a bunch of capillaries. It is a knot-like structure. This structure is known as glomerulus. Again, it contains oxygenated blood. I'll be drawing it with red. This knot-like structure of capillaries is known as glomerulus. Fine. Now comes the most interesting part. From these capillaries, blood now flows into another arteriole. This arteriole is narrower. So the afferent arteriole was larger in diameter, but this efferent arteriole, this is known as efferent arteriole. E-F-F-E-R-E-N-T. So you can see I'm showing everything in red for now. So everything contains oxygenated blood. This blood goes to efferent arteriole. Fine, this much part is clear. Now this renal artery, whatever blood it brought to afferent arteriole, that blood is oxygenated, and from it nitrogenous waste has to be removed. Correct? So before that, imagine whatever blood is coming, if the body just throws all of it out, that won't be useful, right? Because blood contains so many useful substances. It has so much of water. It has so many salts and minerals that we do not want to excrete. It has glucose, it has amino acids, it has red blood cells, white blood cells. We don't want to throw away all of that, correct? So these useful substances are going to go into the efferent arteriole. These useful things won't be thrown away, right? So some part of this blood goes to efferent arteriole. Remaining part is filtered by these capillaries. And now blood enters into a capsule-like structure. See, it is like this. Around the glomerulus, there is a capsule-like structure which is known as Bowman's capsule. Fine? Are you all with me? Are you listening to me? Or has everyone gone to sleep? Okay, so I'm marking it with yellow. This is known as Bowman's capsule. B-O-W-M-A-N-S capsule. So whatever blood was filtered in the glomerulus now comes into the Bowman's capsule. This blood does not contain red blood cells, does not contain white blood cells, and it does not contain the bigger proteins. Okay, only the small substances of blood come into this Bowman's capsule. Now, this Bowman's capsule starts forming smaller tubules. Tubule is a small tube. This Bowman's capsule now develops some convolutions like this. Okay. These convolutions have been given a very special name. These are known as proximal convoluted tubule. There is a meaning of each word here, so don't get flustered. This blue thing is proximal. Proximal means close. So it is close to the Bowman's capsule. That is why it is known as proximal. Then we have another word, convoluted. Convoluted means something that is curvy or having a lot of folds. So this is proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, proximal means something that is nearby. In this proximal tubule, most of the water is absorbed by the body. Body doesn't want to get rid of so much of water. So most of the water is absorbed by the proximal convoluted tubule. Along with water, it also absorbs some sodium ions, some chloride ions, some glucose. These parts are absorbed by the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay. Now, whatever remaining part is left, that goes into a very nice structure known as loop of Henle. It looks like a hairpin. See, let me use this. It'll go like this and come like this, a long tube. Fine. So this green part is known as loop of Henle. Now, in loop of Henle, some remaining water is absorbed. Along with the remaining water, some sodium ions are also absorbed. Okay, I'll mark it. This is loop of Henle. Henle. From loop of Henle, the remaining part goes into another convoluted tubule, something like this and like this. So this convoluted tubule is known as distal convoluted tubule. Distal means something that is present at a distance. So it is present far away from the Bowman's capsule. So we call it distal convoluted tubule. Convoluted tubule. Don't make notes and all now. Focus here. This is important. Now, from convoluted tubule में whatever some remaining water is absorbed, along with it some chloride ions are absorbed. But here one more interesting thing happens. You know, when we are sick, we take some antibiotics, right? So those antibiotics, they need not stay in the body. They have to be removed from the body after they have done their work. So that is done in the distal convoluted tubule. What does it do? Whatever antibiotics are there, it will absorb them from the blood. Okay? And from here, final urine formation has taken place in distal convoluted tubule. The urine now goes into a collecting tube. Okay, this is a collecting tube known as collecting duct. This is the collecting duct. Why is it called collecting duct? Because it is collecting urine. So whatever 1 million nephrons are there in each kidney, all of them will give urine into the collecting duct, and collecting duct will take it to the ureter. Okay, I have got some personal messages saying to repeat. So quickly, I'll just repeat. First of all, from renal artery, blood comes into afferent arteriole. From there, it enters a bundle of capillaries known as glomerulus. Some part of blood goes into efferent arteriole, whatever bigger molecules are there, like proteins, or like red blood cells, white blood cells. All of it goes into the efferent arteriole along with some plasma. Okay, the remaining part of that blood, it doesn't have any cells now, right? RBCs, WBCs have gone into efferent arteriole. So this part of blood that comes into the Bowman's capsule is actually thinner. All the bigger particles have gone in efferent arteriole. So the blood that is coming here from the glomerulus to this yellow capsule, that is going to be thinner. Correct? That liquid portion of the blood then goes into a tube known as proximal convoluted tubule. See, why are we not just throwing it away? We are not throwing it away because that part which has come from the glomerulus, it still contains some very important things. We don't want to throw away those things. We can't simply throw glucose, amino acids, sodium chloride, etc. Right? So all of that has to be reabsorbed. That is why all these tubes are made. They are so long that good reabsorption of things takes place. Right? So first is proximal convoluted tubule. It absorbs almost 65% of the water along with sodium ions, chloride ions, glucose. Right? Now, whatever remaining portion is there, that comes into this green portion called loop of Henle. Here, some more water is absorbed, some more sodium ions are absorbed. From loop of Henle, the remaining portion of that blood goes into the distal convoluted tubule. In distal convoluted tubule, some more water is absorbed. Okay, along with some more water, it also absorbs some chloride ions. Fine. That is absorbed by the blood because blood needs it. Remaining portion is the urine. But here, if we have taken some antibiotics or if there are excess potassium ions in the blood, they also come into the distal convoluted tubule. So urine contains those parts also. That urine then goes into the collecting duct. Yeah, this is how urine formation takes place. Meghna is saying, oh my god, I thought biology was really easy. So we know that if nephron has to be function, it needs some blood. Where is it getting blood for its functions? You remember alveoli, they were all surrounded by a network of blood capillaries. Same way, even this nephron is going to be surrounded by a network of blood capillaries. Okay? Where do we get it from? Fine. So I didn't tell you what happens after blood goes to the efferent arteriole. I told you, okay, efferent arteriole mein some solid portion of the blood went. But where did it go from there? So let's see that now. That blood actually comes to the nephron for its functioning. How does it happen? This efferent arteriole now breaks into a network of capillaries. This efferent arteriole that we had, it starts branching. Okay? It branches like this. It totally surrounds this nephron. See, it comes like this, then so many branches are there. It comes like this to the loop of Henle. It will go around it. These will also be joining each other. Okay. So what is happening? It is supplying oxygenated blood to different parts of the nephron. Now, from here, this keeps on dividing, keeps on providing blood to different parts of the nephron. Ultimately, once the nephron has used up all the blood will then get deoxygenated, and that deoxygenated blood is now collected and it is sent to the renal vein. You remember renal vein? What was it doing? Collecting deoxygenated blood from the kidney, right? So all of these capillaries, now they have deoxygenated blood and they will all join the renal vein, and this renal vein will then join the inferior vena cava. So whenever this diagram comes, don't forget to draw this network of capillaries. Is there what I just drew? This one, no? Same thing over here. I think colors are also the same. Okay, now just to reinforce whatever we saw in a minute, let me just talk about blood supply to nephrons. So for blood supply to nephrons, we had the efferent arteriole. Efferent arteriole, it branched into capillaries. These capillaries supplied blood to the nephron, and then that blood got deoxygenated, so it all went to renal vein. From renal vein it went to inferior vena cava. Alright, so this is how blood is supplied to the nephron. I can just add here, it actually comes from renal artery. Renal artery say it goes to afferent arteriole. From there, some part of it goes to the efferent arteriole, and all of this takes place. And one part from here goes to the glomerulus, and it forms the urine. These are the two different pathways. From afferent arteriole, some blood goes to the efferent arteriole, some comes inside the Bowman's capsule. That forms the urine. Alright, so let us see the next poll. And your time starts now. Yes, so everyone has answered. Let me just share it. Length of a nephron is about, well, some of you said it's 4 to 5 meters. No, it's not that long. It is 4 to 5 centimeter, about the size of my forefinger. Second, dash is the functional and structural unit of the urinary system. It was a multiple choice, so you had to give 3 answers: nephron, kidney tubule, and uriniferous tubule. Third, the knot-like mass of blood capillary inside Bowman's capsule. Well, it is called the glomerulus. We can see that in the diagram also. This is the knot-like mass. It is called glomerulus. Fourth, the blood in efferent arteriole is dash than the blood in afferent arteriole. Fine. So there is a lot of confusion here. I will discuss it in a bit. If people are confused about this, let me just tell it separately. Fifth, the glomerular filtrate consists of, well, glomerular filtrate, I didn't mention it explicitly, but what is filtrate? When you filter, suppose you take some sandy water and you use a filter paper and you put the water on the filter paper. Whatever liquid comes down in the beaker after removing solid waste, that will be known as the filtrate. Fine. So what is glomerular filtrate? Glomerular filtrate is whatever gets filtered from the glomerulus and goes into the tubule. Okay, that will be known as glomerular filtrate. So what does it consist of? I told you that red blood cell, white blood cell, and proteins, these will go into the efferent arteriole. The remaining things will come to the glomerular filtrate or Bowman's capsule. So here the correct answer is not red blood cells. Many of you said red blood cells, but no, red blood cells go into the efferent arteriole. We are talking about glomerular filtrate, what comes into the Bowman's capsule. So it only consists of glucose, amino acids, water, salts, and yeah, that's it. These 4. Second, third, fourth, and fifth option are correct. Red blood cells is absolutely wrong. All of it goes into the efferent arteriole. Sixth, arrange in sequence. Oh wow, I'm surprised that so many of you gave the right answer. That's very good. And second option is the right one. So it starts with afferent arteriole, goes into glomerulus, then it goes into proximal convoluted tubule, then loop of Henle, then distal convoluted tubule, and then the collecting duct. So here the second option is correct. G, D, C, A, B, E, F. And now let's talk about the blood in efferent arteriole. Is it thinner or thicker than the blood in afferent arteriole? So I'm going to stop sharing and then explain this part. We will understand this with the help of 3 steps. There are 3 steps in urine formation. Okay. First is ultrafiltration. This is what was happening in the glomerulus. Okay. What was happening? Blood was squeezing and coming into Bowman's capsule. So that was ultrafiltration. Selective reabsorption. That means reabsorption of important substances from the blood. So what are those important substances? Sodium ions, chloride ions, water and glucose. All of these have to be reabsorbed again by the body. So this takes place in all of them. Proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle and distal convoluted tubule. This process takes place in all 3 of them. Third is tubular secretion. Well, this takes place only in distal convoluted tubule. And you remember I have been talking about these antibiotics or potassium ions that come and join the urine in the distal convoluted tubule. That is what is known as tubular secretion. So let us see this one by one now. We'll start with ultrafiltration. It's very easy to understand. Just pay a little bit of attention. So we have this tube-like structure which divides into a lot of capillaries, right? And another small tube known as efferent arteriole evolves from it. So let me just mark it quickly. This is afferent arteriole. This part is, trust me, this is the last tough part that we are going to study today. After this, it's all easy. This is the efferent arteriole. Fine. So let us first understand what happened here. See, if you notice, the radius of afferent arteriole is very high as compared to the radius of efferent arteriole. What does that mean? That means that when blood comes from the efferent arteriole, goes into these capillaries, the pressure becomes very high. Suppose you have to go through a very wide road with a 4-wheeler, okay, and another road is not that wide, it is very narrow and you have to take your 4-wheeler into that lane. When will you feel the pressure?
Narrow lane.
Yeah, in narrow lane you are going to feel a lot of pressure कि भाई मैं गाड़ी निकालूं कैसे? I don't want to dash into something, right? So that is what is happening here. When the blood was coming into this glomerulus, it was coming through a thick vessel, but now it is leaving through a narrow vessel. So the pressure inside the glomerulus is very high. The pressure of the blood in the glomerulus, this is the glomerulus. The pressure is high because efferent arteriole is thinner as compared to the afferent arteriole. Let me just write it. Pressure is high because efferent arteriole is thinner or lesser in radius than afferent arteriole. That is why the pressure is very high. Okay. Now, let's see what are the components of the blood in efferent arteriole. So, afferent arteriole mein blood came, some part of it went into efferent arteriole. What part was it? Blood plasma. Okay. Then the bigger particles like the red blood cells, RBCs, or the WBCs. They are very big. They cannot pass through these capillaries and come into the Bowman's capsule. So it contains blood plasma, RBCs, WBCs and proteins. This part of blood goes into the efferent arteriole. Now, whatever part of the blood is remaining, that is going to come into the Bowman's capsule. So let me draw that capsule also. This is nothing but the Bowman's capsule. So, from glomerulus, some part of blood went into the efferent arteriole. The remaining part comes into this Bowman's capsule. This blue thing is the Bowman's capsule. Okay. Now, what part does it contain? It contains glucose. It contains a lot of water. It also contains amino acids. Along with it, it contains various ions like sodium ions, like chloride ions, or other vitamins and minerals, whatever is in excess. All of this comes into the Bowman's capsule. This process is known as ultrafiltration. Ultra means at a very high pressure. Why is the pressure high? Because efferent arteriole is thinner than afferent arteriole. So under high pressure, this blood comes into the Bowman's capsule. Am I clear now? Okay. So ultrafiltration is done. We move to the next part, which is the selective reabsorption. Reabsorption means that blood still contains, or let me call it glomerular filtrate. This is nothing but what is coming from the glomerulus, filtered from the glomerulus. So this whole part is actually known as glomerular filtrate. Glomerular, okay. Glomerular filtrate. This glomerular filtrate goes into other parts of the nephron, right? So, okay, again a quick diagram. This is the Bowman's capsule and this is the PCT, proximal convoluted tubule. We have the loop of Henle, then we have the distal convoluted tubule, and we have the collecting duct. Alright, so selective reabsorption takes place in all of these parts. Let me quickly write in which part what gets absorbed. So in PCT, PCT is from here to here. There is absorption of a lot of water. Then there is also the absorption of excess glucose, some sodium ions, some chloride ions, right? That is all reabsorbed here. Now, this is loop of Henle. Here, some water, little water is absorbed and some sodium ions. Some sodium ions are absorbed here. Now we come to the last part, which is the distal convoluted tubule. Here again, little bit of whatever water is remaining. Along with that water, some chloride ions are reabsorbed into the bloodstream. This process is known as selective reabsorption. Okay, and see, whatever salt is in excess, it's not like blood is going to reabsorb all the salt that we eat or all the chloride ions that we eat. It is only going to absorb some portion that is required by the body. If the salt is in excess, it will not absorb all of it. Okay. Now we come to the tricky part, which I have been explaining, but maybe not very well. Let's see. Again, quickly I am drawing the diagram. I love drawing this actually. Yeah. So in tubular secretion is only going to take place in this part, in the DCT. Here the opposite is happening. See, in the reabsorption part, this thing was going from the nephron to the blood, right? From nephron to the blood. But now the opposite is going to happen. From blood, whatever excess things are there, that are going to come to the nephron, into the urine, to become a part of the urine. So here from the blood, whatever excess antibiotics are there in our body, excess antibiotics or excess of potassium ions, all of this comes into the DCD and becomes a part of the urine. Here we have urine, right? That urine is going into the collecting duct. So this is known as tubular secretion. Why is tubular secretion? Because it is taking place in a tubule. Secretion means it is getting secreted by the cells here and getting absorbed by the nephron. Okay, I hope this was clear and not very complicated. So, shall I launch the next poll or do you want to ask something? Do you remember the three processes? Ultrafiltration, selective reabsorption and tubular secretion. Alright, so I think everyone is... Yes, tell me. Who was it? Okay, I think Somil wants me to explain the third one again. So I'll just do that. In the DCD or the distal convoluted tubule, whatever excess potassium or antibiotics are present in the blood, they come and join the urine in the distal convoluted tubule. And then they are excreted out with the urine. That is known as tubular secretion. Alright. So now let's go to the next poll. Okay, Somil is saying my bio is slowly getting better than Trump's hairstyle. My 10th class is luckier than 9th. I got huge holidays and good teachers. Okay, thank you, Somil. That's a very nice comment. I think I'm going to put it up on our website today in student testimonials. Yeah, all of you have submitted. I'm going to end the poll and let's talk about this. First one, selective reabsorption takes place in. All of the above is the right answer. Everywhere substances are getting absorbed. Shall I show you the slide again? Yeah, selective reabsorption is taking place in all three parts. Second, tubular secretion takes place in. Well, a lot of mixed answers here, but tubular secretion just takes place in the DCT, where excess antibiotics and potassium ions from the blood come into the urine. Third, ultrafiltration takes place in. Well, it takes place in the glomerulus. Fourth, the ions that are added to the urine during tubular secretion are potassium chloride. See, during tubular secretion, the ions that are added to the urine. So the correct answer is actually just potassium. Tubular secretion where what is happening? Only potassium and antibiotics were getting added. So here the correct answer is just potassium. I think I made it multiple choice. No, right? Yeah. See, tubular secretion, excess antibiotics and potassium ions. Fifth, ultrafiltration takes place due to dash pressure in capillaries branching from afferent arteriole. Yeah, the pressure in the capillaries is very high. So the blood comes into the Bowman's capsule under very high pressure. So the correct answer is high. I'm going to stop sharing the results and let's move ahead to the last part of today's class. What is urine? Urine is the final product that we were getting in the collecting duct. How can we define urine? So let's call it like this. The part of glomerular filtrate after reabsorption and tubular secretion has taken place. Am I right or is it too complicated? I'm saying that urine is the part of glomerular filtrate. The part of glomerular filtrate left after reabsorption and tubular secretion. Is this definition all right, or are you finding it very tough? Okay, I think it's fine for all of you. Whatever glomerular filtrate comes, some part of it is reabsorbed, some is tubular secretion, and the final portion of it is known as glomerulus. After all these processes, whatever is left is known as the urine. Next, what are the various constituents of urine? Okay, so we studied that it is somewhat yellowish in color because of some bile pigments. There are a few bile pigments present in urine. Then there will be some urea, some uric acid, also some ammonia. Apart from it, there may be some salts. There may be sodium chloride, or it can have some potassium chloride. Okay, so all of these are various components of urine. There may be some other special components. Sometimes there is blood coming out in the urine, that is because of some type of infection, or sometimes there may be some hemoglobin coming out in the urine, that is again because of some infection. In sugar patients who are diabetic, their urine may contain a very huge amount of glucose as well, or even higher sugars like sucrose. But generally, this is what the urine consists of. Regulation of urine output. Now I'm going to tell you a very interesting fact. Do you know, in our body, the entire blood in our body, it goes to the kidney 350 times for removal of nitrogenous waste. Isn't it a lot? 350 times. What is this number? The number of times blood passes through the kidney every day. All the blood in our body goes to the kidney 350 times. The amount of glomerular filtrate, the amount of glomerular filtrate produced in a day is about 180 liters. So this water bottle of mine comes again. 180 of these bottles is the amount of glomerular filtrate. But then most of it gets reabsorbed by the tubules. And the final urine output is only about 1.8 liters. Okay, so it is only about 1% of the total amount of glomerular filtrate. The amount of urine produced in a day is only about 1.8 liters. So what is the factor that is regulating the urine output? What are the things that influence how much urine is going to be produced in a day? So there are two important factors here. First factor is that if you drink more water, the urine output will be more. So first is amount of water in the body. If there is more water, then urine produced will be more. Okay. Second, it also depends on the amount of nitrogenous waste in our body. If there is more nitrogenous waste in our body, to remove it, more urine is going to be formed. Amount of nitrogenous waste in the body. These are the two factors on which the amount of urine in a day depends. Alright? And apart from this, if you remember that action of epiglottis in the larynx, that was being controlled by the cranial nerves of the brain, right? Similarly, if we talk about the heartbeat, rate of heartbeat was being controlled by the medulla oblongata in the brain. There is something that regulates the urine output in the body. That is known as pituitary gland. Have you heard about pituitary gland? Pituitary gland is actually the master gland in our body. It is present inside the brain. So it is a small gland like this in the brain. So this pituitary gland, it produces a hormone. This hormone is known as ADH hormone. This ADH hormone actually controls the amount of urine that is to be produced by the body. Let me write the full form of ADH. ADH is anti-diuretic, diuretic hormone. This hormone regulates the amount of urine present by our body, and this hormone is made by the pituitary gland of the body. A question: why do we urinate fewer times in summer? So, do you agree that in summers we drink a lot more water than we do in winters? But in winters, the urination becomes more frequent. So, in summers, even though we drink a lot of water, the amount of urine that is being produced is lesser. Can you think of a reason for this? In summers, although we drink more water, but there is a loss of water in the form of sweat. That is why in summers, even though we drink more water, the amount of urine produced is less. What does sweat do? Sweat regulates the temperature of the body. Regulates the temperature of the body. So if it is hot, we sweat more to release more heat. Have you heard of kidney stones? Many people get these stones in their kidney, right? What is that? They have to get operated and all, or sometimes it just comes out through the ureter. They don't need to get operated for it. Do you know how it's formed? So it is actually formed by some insoluble substances present in our kidney. Sometimes, see, this uric acid is actually insoluble in blood. It is not very soluble in blood. Or there is a compound known as calcium oxalate. Even this compound is not very soluble in blood. So because of compounds like these, kidney stones are formed. They are insoluble. Slowly they start accumulating. Okay, and because of that they form some stone like structure which is actually very painful. Fine. So kidney stones are formed because of these insoluble substances present in the blood. Almost the last part of the chapter, which is osmoregulation. Osmoregulation is a very simple concept. See, don't go on the name. Name looks very difficult. It is just, so in our body, the blood has to contain a particular amount of water, a particular amount of salts. So the maintenance of this is known as osmoregulation. Okay. What is this? Maintenance of water and salt level in the blood. Of water and salt levels in the blood is called osmoregulation. Okay. Now there is something known as osmotic pressure, and blood has to have a certain osmotic pressure. So osmoregulation, you can also call it as regulation of osmotic pressure of blood. What exactly is osmotic pressure? We'll learn, it comes in chemistry class 12. But for now, let's remember that osmoregulation is the regulation of osmotic pressure of blood. And with this knowledge, let us move on to the next poll, and your time starts now. I'm going to end the poll and share results. First one, the main constituents of urine are, so here except glucose and antibiotics and amino acids, all are correct. Okay, except glucose, antibiotics and amino acids, others are all correct. Second, kidney stones are formed due to insoluble substances like uric acid and calcium oxalate. Third, The process by which kidney maintains salt and water level of the blood is known as osmoregulation. Fourth, the amount of urine secreted by a person in a day is around 1 to 2 liters. Someone has said 8 to 10 liters. Well, I think that's a lot for a day. Fifth, how is the amount of urine regulated by the pituitary gland? It is done with the help of ADH or antidiuretic hormone. Okay, now let's move on to the last part, which is artificial kidney. So you must have heard many a times that so and so person's kidneys have failed and now they have been put on artificial kidneys. It is also known as dialysis. Have you heard of this? Dialysis. When a person's kidneys fail, this process is
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, this process
Yes,
is carried out to do that work. So that is known as artificial kidney. Let's understand what exactly is going on here. So we know that that person's kidneys are not working at all, but we have to remove nitrogenous waste from the body. So that we'll be doing through some external fluid. All right. We have this chamber like structure, right? Can you see with a lot of red tubes there? This is actually filled with some yellow colored fluid. That fluid is known as dialyzing solution. This diagram is from NCERT book. So that dialyzing solution, it is something like the blood that we have in our body. It is maintained to a concentration which is same as the blood in our body. Okay. So the osmotic pressure of this solution, yellow solution, is same as the osmotic pressure of our blood. Now, what exactly is done? We have to purify the blood, right? So, we are going to do one thing. We are going to take out blood from that person's body, put it in this solution. This solution will purify it, and then we are going to put the blood back in the body of the person. So first of all, we took out some blood from this person's body. We took it out from an artery in a hand, and now we pumped it. We put it into some yellow solution, which is known as dialyzing solution. This solution has osmotic pressure equal to that of our blood. And these tubes that you see here, they are made of a semi-permeable membrane. That means they are only going to allow some substances to pass through them. So whatever nitrogenous waste are present in the body, they will flow, when this blood will flow through these red tubes, because of diffusion, the nitrogenous waste will go into the yellow solution. Okay, and then we remove that solution, we keep putting fresh solution. And now the nitrogenous waste from the blood has moved into this dialyzing solution. So our blood is now devoid of nitrogenous waste. We are going to bring it, put it back again in this person's body. We took out blood, we passed it through a solution using some semi-permeable membrane. Nitrogenous waste came out. The blood is purified now. We put it back in our body. The thing to remember is that the osmotic pressure of the solution is same as osmotic pressure of the blood. So I think that was clear, and maybe I can just launch a quick poll. This poll has, I think, 3 or 4 questions only for the sake of completion, and your time starts now. Somil is saying this is the first bio class which is about to end and he did not notice. Okay, thank you. Okay, all of you have answered, I suppose. I'm going to end. Quickly discuss the results. First, the process which helps in removing nitrogenous waste artificially is known as hemodialysis. Hemo means blood. So dialysis or hemodialysis is the same thing. Second, the dialyzing solution has the same osmotic pressure as blood. Third, hemodialysis is same as normal kidneys, but there is no reabsorption. That is true, right? We are not reabsorbing anything here. Fourth, the tubes in the dialyzing chamber are made of semi-permeable membrane. And with that, we have reached the end of today's class. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I hope you enjoyed. See you on Monday.